Hi, this is Brendan from Watto Training, and in this tutorial we take a look at Level 1 driving skills for C-Class learners. This tutorial focuses more so on the what as opposed to the how of teaching a Level 1 learner. We've got lots of instructional videos on the Watto Training YouTube channel, so feel free to go there to get more details on the how. The reference model that I use when I come up with my different levels for learner driver training come from the reference model known as novice to mastery. Now, with the novice to mastery model, there are 4 distinct stages of mastery: novice, competent, experienced, and mastery/expert. I've broken my model up into 5 levels, and I've just called them level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it works more effectively for what I do. There are different models out there. I'm not saying my model's the best or the right one. I just find that it works for me. So I'm sharing it with you today, and with the hope that it might assist you with your own development of how you go about training a learner for C-Class. I also hasten to add that with this particular model, the final dot point calls the person a master. So we've got the slide there of a master craftsperson, for example, or an expert, someone who has achieved at a high level of skill. I would be wary about calling a learner driver who's just got a driving license that they've mastered driving, because really what they're doing is just starting out as an independent driver without a supervisor or a trainer present, and they're also in a high-risk category from around that sort of 17 to 25-year-old age group as well. So they've got a whole new series of challenges as they go through that phase. So when we take a look at the 5 levels of skill development for C-Class learners, level 1, we're looking here at a beginner, no driving experience, and we focus on building what are called foundational skills. The ability to conduct a cabin drill, awareness of controls, developing observation and scanning skills, and being able to move the vehicle off and stop it, as well as steering, and then introducing some signaling as well. So there's some foundational skills there. Ideally, if you can do that one in a quiet area, that's ideal. Level 2, using those initial level 1 foundational skills, such as observation, scanning, moving off, stopping, in some quiet road situations. These would be ideal in residential areas which didn't have a lot of traffic flow. So we're talking 40, 50, 60 zone areas, and then starting to introduce some left and some right turns. There'll be some chicanes, some simple roundabouts in a lot of residential areas. There'll be some T sections as well. So we found foundational skills as well for our maneuvers, such as straight line reversing and some U-turns. I also like to use cul-de-sacs as well in residential areas for developing their steering, shoulder checking, and again, getting an idea of the turning circle of the vehicle. Okay, level 3 skills, we then again build on those initial skills, but we start applying them in a broader range of situations. So the speed zones would increase, and also there would be a broader number of traffic situations that you would be starting to experience. For example, school zones would be one of those, roadworks areas. So in this phase of the driving, there's lots of teaching, lots of guidance from the trainer or supervisor, and lots of practice time, what is commonly known as time on task. Think of a swimming pool, and you've got a swimmer mastering the strokes, freestyle, butterfly, etc., backstroke. This is laps up and down the pool, building a competent technique, getting breathing happening, etc. Same thing goes here with the driving as well. You build those skills up, and they start to become, more second nature, rather than having to think actively about doing every single task all the time. So this is quite a broad part of the training program here as well. So as we build those skills up, we also then are working in the maneuvers as well. Then we get to level 4, again building on level 3 skills, and even broader series of situations. So higher speed zones, so onto the freeway, off the freeway, busier traffic areas, so you might drive a little bit further in towards city areas, etc. Handling complex intersections and roundabouts, training where necessary in higher order skills, but there's an increasing focus on the learner taking responsibility for their own hazard recognition and decision-making skills, as well as their operational skills. More maneuvers, less instruction, more observing what they're doing, and giving them feedback on how they can improve their performance. The trainer uses more coaching techniques than teaching techniques in this phase. Okay, and then level 5, We are working on two things here. The first one is assisting the learner to do some what's called test practice, which might involve some informal assessment and feedback. Again, less instruction, so there'd be direction giving, but not telling them what to do, allowing them to actually make the decision and perform the task, and then giving them feedback on that. The learner is also encouraged to self-reflect on their own performance, finding ways that they can improve, their insights about what they learned about a certain situation and what they might try next time. There's also a focus as well for preparing the learner driver for beyond the test as a solo driver with no supervisor or trainer present. Hence, they will have added responsibility as a road user. Okay, we also need to keep in mind that we have automatic trainers, we have manual trainers, we have those who do both. So as you go through the tutorial, just take away from it what is relevant for your particular transmission type. Let's keep in mind as well as we go through the general training strategies for Level 1 C-Class learner drivers, there's the priority triangle. There's three parts of the triangle, as you can see. Up the top we have the must know, the middle section is the should know, which is bigger, so there's lots of should knows, and down the bottom there's lots of nice to knows as well. So as you're going through the dot points on the presentation, think about what you think are the must-know items. And one thing I always say is, what does the student need to know or be able to do to perform the very next task that we're working on? So I build those elements in first, and then we put them into practice and so on. You wouldn't want to get bogged down too much on the nice-to-knows when a student is in Level 1 phase, because this is beginner phase, and they need to be focused very clearly on the must-knows. You want to overload their brain. Also keep in mind Miller's Law, and Miller's Law is the rule of 7. The number of objects an average human can hold in short-term memory is 7 plus or minus 2. So it's easy to overload students, as I was saying on the last slide. So think about presenting key points and information and then putting them in practice, stop, then do the next part, stop, and then do the next part, rather than I'm going to talk for 45 minutes and then at the last 10 minutes we'll give you a go. Okay, be effective with your teaching training time. Have these higher goals operating in every session, and especially in your Level 1 session, because what you're trying to do is start off in that early phase and keep them going. Like, we don't want them to start off and be disheartened or give up or put off getting a license because they had a negative experience early. So the trainer/supervisor has a lot of influence on the learning environment. Keep it positive, keep it encouraging, keep cool, keep relaxed, keep calm. Don't be afraid to have a laugh. But at the same time, keep the attention focused. Be in the moment and have that hyper awareness of what's going on around the vehicle. Connect the knowledge. So as we gain the knowledge, we join the dots together and we can then apply it. Help the students organize their knowledge so that they're actually able to apply it in different situations. Provide timely feedback, short, sharp, timely feedback. Keep it positive. Again, don't talk too long or too much. Promote quality in performance. So we know that in the early phases there will be lots of mistakes made. That's all part of the learning process. But we are always pushing them towards a quality performance. Quality in performance leads to a safer outcome. Manage expectations. You've got your own expectations of yourself, your own performance, what you think you'd like to achieve, but the learning at the end of the day will be student-centered. We can only progress as fast as that student is capable of doing so. There's also often parent/guardian expectation as well. And there might be comparison to what other brothers or sisters did or what friends at school did. So again, there's an art in just being in the moment, focusing attention, keeping the learning environment positive, keeping the lessons moving, but it's only the trainer/supervisor and the learner in the vehicle. That what happens there is what to focus on and not be caught on distractions about what other people say at school or whatever. Okay, enhance motivation to learn. So we want to keep motivating the student to learn and to move forward in their progression and to take some ownership over their learning as well. Communicate your message in a variety of ways. It could be demonstration, it could be diagram, it could be model, it could be drawing something on an iPad or watching a little video to make a point, but use variety other than just talking, because after a while, it just starts to create fog in the student's mind. And promote practice. If the student has the ability to practice in between sessions, that's a good thing as well. You'll notice that they will come along in leaps and bounds. Okay, so you might have a plan, and we look at the top diagram there of the blue car, where it's smooth sailing. The blue car drives from point A to point B at the orange flag. But in reality, quite often, learning looks more like what's happening below. There can be hills, there can be stormy weather, there can be challenging parts to the journey, and the astute trainer is aware that the reality of the training challenges, they will remain that solid, constant presence that will guide the student through and stay cool and calm as they go through any emotional challenges where they feel like they're hopeless, or someone toots the horn at them and yells at them and they feel intimidated or whatever. Also, I'd encourage trainers and supervisors to pick training locations which are safe and secure, not many things to hit, and not many obstacles around as well. Managing risk. It's always important as well with the training process to manage risk. Step 1, identify the hazards. Step 2, decide who might be harmed and how. Step 3, evaluate the risks and decide on the precautions. Step 4, record your findings and implement them. And step 5, review your assessment and update if necessary. Make a high priority in choosing training locations and times of day that are conducive to quality learning and safe learning. Okay, vehicle checks. Now, with regards to vehicle checks, a lot of trainers do not do vehicle checks. There's often two reasons that are said. One is these vehicle checks are not part of the driving test. Two, trainers, again, in terms of the bulk of the content that we have to cover, they want to get on to the driving part as opposed to all the pre-driving parts as well. So there's a bit of a sense of, let's get on with it, let's get progressing with this part. And often there'll be some trainers who will say, look, if the student wants to conduct a vehicle check, I'm happy to go through that with them, but they'll give the student the option of that. So I would say the trainer is responsible for making sure that the vehicle is in safe working condition primarily. So again, I'll leave that one with trainers to decide if and where that fits in. Okay, the cabin drill or cockpit drill, it's often known. Be wary with your student of safe entry to the vehicle. If that blue shirted learner driver throws the door open and wipes out the bicycle rider, well, we've got someone injured and we've got a problem. So again, make sure with all sessions, safe vehicle entry and exit. Teach your student how to conduct the cockpit drill. So 3 adjustments with the seat, forward, back, up, down, the tilt as well, and the headrest. Go through the purpose and the adjustment. Make sure the steering is set up, they can see the gauges, and maximum vision up ahead. Hand positions, 9 to 3 and 10 to 2, whatever's comfortable depending on the learner's preference or the way the steering wheel structured and feels most comfortable, and also the airbag locations and awareness of those as well. Seatbelt, low, flat and firm, height adjustment as well. Mirrors, rear view and the dip, left mirror, right mirror and blind spots / shoulder checks. Then we go through the door controls, window controls as well, what their purpose is, and you can go through the sun visors and internal lights as well. That I've highlighted the yellow, which I would say are high priority. The ones that aren't highlighted are less of a priority. Vehicle start up and shut down. Now, people might say, look, you'd probably put this a little bit back in the process, but if you're in a warm climate and it's 37 degrees, the car, you'll want that aircon running and cool, because nervous learners, they want to be in a cool, comfortable environment. But essentially, wherever you choose to insert this into your program, start up and shut down, securing the vehicle with the handbrake and air conditioning, as we said. Steering wheel controls, we've got the horn, indicators, park lights, headlights, high beam, washers, wipers, cruise control, radio, and other. So again, Horn is a safety device. That's important. Indicators are important because if you change direction, the student will need to use those. Park lights, headlights, high beam. Less important on, in daytime, but again, it's part of the driving requirement for safety. Like if you get a thundercloud come over and heavy weather, they will need to use it. Same with the washers and wipers as well. So I've highlighted it as I still think it's part of the steering wheel control routine. It doesn't take long to go through. Dashboard, instrument, cluster lights, and dials. So again, I've highlighted speedo. It's one of the most common ways that people fail, and also driving over the speed limit has an inherent danger to it, so I see that one as a priority. I know some trainers like to cover the fuel gauge as well because some learner drivers might forget to check the fuel gauge, so they say it's a nice life skill to have. Again, it's up to the discretion of the trainer. But what you will notice is there's a lot of dot points mounting up here. So the more we are overloading that Miller's rule of 7 plus or minus 2, the more it can be overwhelming. So again, just leaving it up to the trainer's discretion. With warning lights, one common one I point out is the handbrake. Of course, fuel, oil, engine, and temperature are all very important. And down the bottom, different colors of warning lights should be covered as well. You may choose just to introduce those across a number of lessons. So if a student's doing 10 lessons with you, you could just pick and choose a couple each week to cover as a stimulus at the start of the lesson and then move on from there. Console controls, hazard warning lights, important. Air conditioning, important for comfort. And front and rear demister as well. Oops. Let's go on to shifting the focus now into the actual driving part. So, driver distraction and attention. To anticipate and avoid hazards on the road, drivers must give their full attention at all times. Any lapse in concentration, inattention, or distraction away from the driving increases the risk of a crash, e.g. phone, friends, food, distractions outside the vehicle. So this comes back to this point of when conducting a lesson, students need to be focused on what they're doing, and that needs to be reinforced as well. You might see other people driving along behind you looking at their phone, and you might choose to change lanes to avoid them because again, you want to protect the buffer zone around your vehicle, also known as the crash avoidance space. Observation and scanning, one of the most important principles to go through with your learner. The key to good observation is scanning. Keep our eyes moving constantly, looking at the environment around us, into the distance, at the road surface to your left and right, regularly at your mirrors and instruments. So this will be reinforced constantly in those level 1 sessions right through to build routine into the driver. Mirror checks are always vitally important, so check your mirrors every few seconds so you always know what is behind you. In particular, check your mirrors before changing your speed or road position when preparing to turn or change lanes, especially if you plan to turn where others may not expect it, such as laneways, driveways, and side streets, when you are stopped behind another vehicle. Steering. So we want to get moving. So even though it's called steering, I refer to it as looking and steering, so looking where you're going and observing. Those two skills go hand in hand. Now, there's always a lot of debate over which steering techniques preferred, pull-push steering or hand-over-hand steering. Again, I will leave that to the trainer's discretion, and also sometimes the learner will have a natural tendency to favour one or the other, but I mean, a competent trainer is aware of both, can teach both, and can be flexible. And quite often you'll get learners who will use different techniques in different situations. So through a single lane roundabout going straight ahead, they might use a pull-push technique to go through that single lane roundabout. But then when they come to doing something like a 3-point turn, or in Queensland known as a turnaround manoeuvre, they might use hand-over-hand steering to perform that manoeuvre. So it just varies. Linked to airbag deployment as well. And also you might at this point choose to cover dry steering, or you may choose to cover that later. But we want to be steering whilst moving. An exercise that's optional is a turning circle exercise, which we can just get the student to turn the wheel 180 degrees and just hold it and see the big wide turning circle it makes. Then we can do another little circuit where they do a 360-degree turn on the wheel and have a look at the turning circle of the vehicle, and then we can do full lock for the tight turning circle. That also links into self-correction of the steering wheel as well, and just guiding the steering wheel back to the original position. So that's just getting some steering going. Common steering errors as well, such as palming the wheel, grabbing inside the steering wheel, and so on. So you can talk about the do's and don'ts of the steering. Okay, so with our steering exercises, quite often what could occur is you could be in a safe, open area, and the trainer could control the pedals and the gears if required, such as a manual vehicle and the clutch, from the left seat, and the student can look and steer around a circuit in a quiet area to the left and also to the right. And if you want to extend it, they could go in a figure 8 configuration. It just, again, depends on the space that you've got to work with and how busy it is. The pedals, then I'd be covering, once we've done some steering, I'd be covering the accelerator, the brake, and the clutch, how to use those, and also the gears. Linked to the bicycle. Bicycle's got gears as well, a common one to link to. Go through the gear patterns for a manual instructor, and also the gear changing sequence. And they would do all of that static, so as a show and tell, and same for the automatic as well, static demonstration. Then we move on to applying the use of the gears and the clutch with move off and stop. So the trainer can demo from the left seat, excuse that typo, then learner practice controlling the pedals. So moving off in a straight line in a quiet location. And here we're talking about clutch control, friction point. Some trainers will refer to the tachometer, the revs, feeling the car dip at the back for the manual, and also for the manual driver stalling on takeoff. So sometimes you would do a demo of what causes a stall. You secure the vehicle, start the vehicle back up, and start again. Sometimes it can be a good thing to show a student as a trainer from the left seat what a stall is like, so that when it occurs, they don't get a shock or a fright or anything like that, and you've already explained the procedure. How to stop. And again, you might do a demo on stalling when pulling up, how it happens, how to avoid. Gear changing. So you might then move on to basic gear changing, such as 1 up to 2. And then if the student doesn't correctly control the gear stick, what happens when they go 1 to 4, for example. Clutch coasting. What is it? Why is it dangerous? And angel gear, which is probably more of a trucky term, but I still like to use it with manual learners. Angel gear, meaning if you're going to drive around out of gear, you won't have the control of the engine, and it's very dangerous, and we certainly don't want to end up in heaven any sooner than we need to, so that's why they call it angel gear. Then we've got the accelerator control in first gear, 10 kilometers, 5 kilometers, to control car park, driving, and stop-start. Controlled braking to a stop, as if in traffic, demonstrate and explain at low speed. And then, even still at low speed, emergency braking in first gear, just to demonstrate if a child runs out what we'll do. I also go through verbal commands, such as we generally want smooth, controlled braking to a desired point where we stop, but also there's the emergency braking command of, you might say, look, if I say hard stop, or I say stop in a commanding voice, then you know we need to go to the brake. The example of where this might happen is the student might be looking to the right, but some hazard might come to the left, and you as the trainer might see it on the left, the student doesn't see it, and then you call for the hard stop. Now, if they don't respond immediately, cover the brake with your right foot and get straight on it as well. Curb departure and curb return. So we would go through that technique with the student. Again, you could do it in the quiet area, but you're getting the mirror indicator blind spot check, and then practice the return technique. We've got our steering controls. Now what we're doing here is we're doing our steering practice, but also doing the pedals as well. So the first time through, the student's doing the steering, the trainers are doing the pedals and the gears. Now we've moved on to the student steering and the student doing the pedals as well. Drive around the same circuit to the left and around the circuit to the right, and even do some figure 8 practice. Then if you've got an appropriate area like this one here, you could do some parking control as well. So you practice coming in, parking between witches' hats, and driving out as well, and using those scanning techniques as well. Signaling, looking, and moving off. That really sets them up for moving onto the road. Hopefully this has given you some guidance as what to cover with level 1 beginner students, and it should set them up to do level 2, which would be moving on to quiet roads in residential areas, which will be covered in a separate tutorial. This has been Brendan from Watto Training. Safe driving.